All right, here's example 2 from section 2.5. Looks like they took a survey asking opinions of different countries about if they agree or disagree that the primary cause of poverty is societal injustice. And so they took some data and then they kind of took some pieces of this data and gave us this example number 2. It says here a survey is taken that asked 2,000 randomly selected US and Mexican adults the following question. Do you agree or disagree that the primary cause of poverty, poor, is societal injustice? The results of the survey showed that 1,060 people agreed with the statement, 400 Americans agreed with the statement. If half the adults surveyed were Americans, and then it asks us to answer a few questions. Now, what I'd like us to do is I'd like us to take this information and I'd like us to first make a Venn diagram, and then we can answer the questions more easily using that picture. So I went through and I listed the information that they gave us. We know that there was a total of how many people? Yeah, 2,000, right? Because that's what it said here in the problem. All right, how many of those were Americans? Well, again, it says that there are half, so I know that there are 1,000 Americans in this survey. How many Americans agreed? Well, it said that 400 Americans agreed with the statement. How many people agreed total? Remember, it said 1,060. So off to the side, I kind of pieced through the information and wrote down those 4 pieces there. Now let's go ahead and try to put it into a Venn diagram. This is kind of the tricky part. You've got to be careful because your picture has to make sense. The separate sets have to make sense. Their overlaps have to make sense. You got to be kind of careful here. Most students want to say something like this. Put the US here and the Mexicans here. But the problem is, what's the overlap then? That would be you're in US and Mexico at the same time, which doesn't really make sense in this scenario. Plus, where would the agree and disagree go? So that doesn't really work. So then the next thing students want to do is put all the people that agree here and all the people that disagree here. But now be careful, what would the overlap mean this time? That would mean you're agreeing and disagreeing at the same time, which doesn't really make any sense. So, how are we going to organize this Venn diagram so that the overlaps still make sense? Maybe try a few ways and see if you can come up with something that works. Here's how I did it. I'm going to do all the Americans in this bubble, in this set. And then I'm going to do all the people that agree in this bubble. And so what would the overlap be? Wouldn't that be Americans that agree? So I have Americans out here. I have people that agree here, and I have Americans that agree here in the middle. And so if I have Americans, let's do purple here. I have Americans that agree. Can I say AA? If I'm outside here, I'm American, but I don't agree. So if I'm American and I don't agree, doesn't that mean I'm American and I disagree? So all the Americans that disagree would be here. All the Americans that agree would be here. What would be in this region? Well, that would be the people that agree that aren't Americans. So wouldn't that mean that that would be the Mexicans that agree? And then what would be outside here? It looks like that would be, it looks like that would be all the people that didn't agree that weren't Americans. So we could say Mexicans that disagree. All right, so now can we answer the questions in our survey? Maybe we need some numbers here first. So how many Americans agreed in the middle bubble? 400, right? 400 Americans agreed. Now, how many agreed total? Well, wasn't that 1,060? And these are all the people that agreed? Well, if 1,060 people total agreed, now be careful, I can't put 1,060 in here because I already have 400 people in that bubble. So what number do you think would go outside here to make sure that I have only a total of 1,060? Yeah, wouldn't that be 660? Because now I have 400 Americans that agree. I have 660 Mexicans that agree. That is still a total of 1,060 people that agree. So be careful that you don't double up and add any extra numbers in there. All right, so let's see. How many Americans were there in this survey? We said 1,000, but be careful. If this is my American bubble and I already have 400 people there, then how many would be on the outside of that bubble? Only 600, right? So there's still a total of 1,000 Americans in the survey? Okay. And so if I have 600, 400, and 660, and then it says that we really have 2,000 people total, well then what's the left over? How many people would be on the outside? Did you get 340? And so now that we have all of our numbers, we should be able to answer the questions. So how many Mexicans agreed with this statement? Well, here are the number of Mexicans that agreed. I got 660. How many Mexicans disagreed? That's where we got the 340 from. So it might be easier to make a Venn diagram, a picture, organizing all of your information, seeing where the overlaps are, and being able to place our numbers so we can answer those questions about our survey. Kind of tricky at first getting the Venn diagram to work, but it's helpful later on when we go to answer more questions about the survey. Practice that one, and then we'll do the last video here in a second.